if you like Pandemic, there's a new game in store for you, which is The Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship.
Yes, this game is a new game under the Pandemic system. So this is the first time I've seen the name Pandemic system written anywhere. So it's endorsed as its own system, I suppose. And it is by Matt Leacock, same designer.
And today we're going to give you similarities and differences from this game to the usual Pandemic system. And hi everyone, it's Stella.
And Tarrant. Welcome to Meeple University.
If you know where we are in a cold Melbourne. I think lots of our viewers are in the US, so they'll be like, why are they wearing like jumpers, jackets? And that's why we've got like electric blankets under here as well.
It has been not unseasonably cold, but because it's winter, but
Yeah.
it has been cold. It's been a
Very
cold
chilly,
winter, yeah.
very chilly. Hope you are all well. Now we're going to start with the overview of the game and the similarity and differences, and then we're going to give you a bit of a review of The Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship.
So here we have the game roughly as it is during setup, and you can see it's a map with a whole lot of locations, and much like other games under the Pandemic system, you're trying to achieve 4 things. And we've got these 4 objectives that you need to complete, and they're various types of objectives. You need to bring characters or specific characters to certain locations, either to achieve something on the board or, as in Pandemic, to collect cards of the same type or of the same color. And in this case, it's of the same resource, which is showing up at the top of the card. Each individual player is going to control 2 characters in this game, and on each turn, it's an action point allowance game. Each of your characters, one gets to do 4 actions, and the other gets to do 1. You'll move them around, and then you'll draw more player cards, and then you'll draw shadow cards, which will make the forces of Shadow, the enemy, work against you. And they come in the form of these little shadow troops. So you have your own troops, and there's these shadow troops. They're kind of like the cubes from original Pandemic. And they will go around fighting each other. While you've also got the Nazgul. These are the ring wraiths. They're going around the board trying to look for Frodo and the ring, and also the Eye of Sauron. And so you always play the game with destroying the one ring as one of your objectives. There's a whole lot of objective cards that you can choose from, but you always use destroy the one ring, and it's always the last objective that you have to face. And so after doing your other 3 objectives, you have to get Frodo to Mount Doom, where he throws the ring in by discarding 5 cards that have this ring icon. As the game goes on, the enemies are going to draw more and more cards, so it's going to become stacked against you, or certainly escalate against you. And if you can achieve all of those before hope drops to 0, then you'll win the game, because every bad thing that happens ultimately results in a loss of hope. And so this is the only lose condition. It is running out of hope.
So don't get hopeless.
Yes.
Are we up to the similarities? So you probably, when you heard and you played Pandemic and you heard the overview, you can already picked up a few things. So what are the first main one, Tarrant?
So the most obvious similarity, the thing it is most similar, is how the deck of player cards works. It's fundamentally identical. You've got cards that have, in this case, they're regions, which are the larger areas instead of specific locations.
Yeah.
But each of them has a resource in the corner, which is the equivalent of the color from Pandemic. And a lot of what you're trying to do is get sets of those cards into a single player's hands, and you have to go to the location on the card to exchange them.
And there's also flavor text here, The Lord of the Rings.
The deck also has event cards, which you can play at any time, on or off your turn. And layered through the deck is the Skies Darken cards. This is the escalation card. It results in the threat rate going up, which means you draw more of the bad cards every round, and a few other nasty things happening. So all of this is very, very much Pandemic. It's the core thing, which is Pandemic system.
It looks almost like you stacked the cards. It's like came out the right time of your explanation, Tarrant.
I did stack the cards.
I just want to see what's
I
next.
prepared that one.
There you go. Oh, very good. And the second similarity is that we are still doing this cooperatively we're still fighting fires, trying not to get things to escalate, and ultimately working together for the same goal. There's no semi-cooperative, there's nothing like that. So that has got similar feeling.
Yeah, how it manifests is a little bit different to basic Pandemic, where you're trying to protect every location from getting 3 cubes. In this case, you're trying to protect your havens, which are these specific brightly yellow coloured locations on the board, because as you lose those, which will happen when these enemy units advance, that's one of the major ways of losing hope. And so going in and fighting to make sure you don't get those big chunks of enemy units going into those havens is a big part of the firefighting element of the game.
And the third similarity is in terms of mechanic. It's still action point allowance, where you get certain number of actions and you do whatever you want, and the actions are, to a certain degree, are similar.
Yeah, other than the fact that you've now got those 2 characters and you can...
Spoiler, but yes.
Yeah. But one of them still gets to do 4 actions. A lot of them are going to be spent moving. A lot of them are getting to those locations to exchange cards. And yeah, those will have a very similar feel to all the other games in the Pandemic system.
Now, up to the differences. Now, we have actually more differences than similarities. So let's start with the first one, Tarrant.
Yeah, the differences are what makes this quite an interesting different take on the Pandemic system, which I guess we'll get to in the review side of things. And so the first and most obvious difference, which we've mentioned already, is that each player is controlling 2 characters, and one of those characters is getting 4 actions per turn, and the other one is getting 1. What is most interesting about that, you have 1 hand of cards, so it's shared between your characters. And one of the things you quickly work out here is that there's no rapid movement capability like you have in basic Pandemic. The board doesn't wrap around.
No.
So if you're over here, it's hard to get over here. And there's no plane ticket action. You can't discard a location card to go straight there. So each individual character is, much like in the 11 Hours of Lord of the Rings movies, walking on foot over very long distances. And where that feels very restrictive to start with, but that's really where the second character comes into its own. If you keep your characters separate, you've got one who's very slow, but who can meet up with someone else and do the exchanges so that your other character can catch it. So that, I think, is a very interesting, different take on the long-range movement elements of Pandemic. And I find that quite interesting.
And the fact that a character can move while picking up other characters automatically. Every character can do that. Like, it's not just one special ability that one character can do that. No, everyone can pick up another character, or the soldier. We'll talk about it later, to another location as part of their movement.
Yes, another thing which gets around that tyranny of distance.
So the second one, we're talking about taking these little dudes on the board, is the battle and recruitment.
Yes, this is a game. If you again think back to the theme of the books and the movies, you've got all these big battles between orcs and elves and their huge sceneries, and then you've got all the characters are kind of there, but a character is a small part of the war. And even on this board, all right, the characters are these huge pieces, but the battle is being fought by the troops. Yeah. And that's all these little cube-sized pieces. They have that Pandemic cube feel because they're very much cube-sized. Instead of the old Pandemic style where cubes are popping up of different diseases and you're going and curing them, in this one, troops are popping up of the enemy and you have to recruit troops of the good sides, which are all the other colours, and let them...
fight for you.
Let them fight for you.
And they have different color cube depending on which location you recruit which color cube or troops, which is thematic.
Yes. It's mostly only thematic because each type of troop fights the same. but certain characters are...
Easier to recruit than others.
If you've got an elven character, it's going to be cheaper for them. It's basically going to be free for them to bring elven troops onto the board, whereas it would normally cost you resources. So you've got to kind of manage that.
And the only resources are the cards, which is this logo at the top corner.
Yep.
Whoop, the other way. So speaking about battle, they actually require you to use dice.
Yes, you can see some dice here. There's also some battle dice over there to the side. Bring them in with the fancy dice tower that comes with the game here.
Yep. Taryn assembled this one. Well, I actually lean it forward like that. That's why.
It's not a dice tower design issue, I promise.
Yes.
So it is not like your original Pandemic where you know that you go in, you spend one action, you remove one cube. In this one, you're setting up battles, you're rolling dice to see how those battles goes. They're mitigable dice rolls, but the dice rolls will remove your units, they'll remove enemy units. They can go well or badly for you. And you have to spend the resistance resource, which is the rings, to re-roll dice. Or you can spend the valor, which is the swords, to remove enemy troops as part of the battle.
Here it is. Finally, yeah.
So you're going to find that, not everything is going to be predictable. It's not all going to go your way and be able to math it out the way you can in Pandemic, or math out the probabilities, because there's much more probability at play.
That's correct. Well, speaking about probability, the next difference is the resolution cards, which is the shadow cards. In Pandemic, you just open the cards based on the danger level. Well, I just say danger level, and then you resolve what it says in the card. But in this one, you resolve depending on what is on the back of the previous card on the deck. So, for example, this one. So there's a banner there. That means you resolve the bottom part. For this one, the flag is at the top. You resolve the top part.
I forgot to layer that, so I'm glad it turned out that way. The deck still reforms the same way as the normal Pandemic system. So when skies darken, this card is going to be shuffled and put back on top. And again, in Pandemic, that has a really semi-deterministic outcome because you know what's going to happen, over the course of several turns. In this one, there's so much more variability on what could happen because you have no idea whether it's the top or the bottom half of the card that's going to resolve. Means that how the enemy attacks you is a lot less predictable. You're going with the flow a lot more. And that flows on to the next difference, which is you really don't have that explosive outbreak mechanism that you had in Pandemic. And it goes hand in hand with the lower predictability of the shadow cards. Pandemic, you could see, all right, I've got 2 cubes there, I've got to manage that. That's my priority. Here, you can get a 3rd unit, you can get a 4th unit, you can have 10 shadow units in one location. That's not going to be an immediate problem.
Correct.
And there's no outbreaks track that's going to bring you to the end of the game. What's going to happen is periodically when you draw these red banners, a whole lot of units are going to march and they're going to initiate battles if they come across any of your troops.
This one, for example, it goes that way. I think, is that correct?
Well, it could go that way. With this card, it will go that way. And that's what all these coloured paths are. They can go one way and then get moved off to another way. It's if you get a big chunk that you can't defeat before they reach a haven, they'll capture that haven and drop your hope. And that's kind of the closest thing there is to an outbreak. But it's a slow burn. It sets up this mass of troops and this battle, and it may or may not reach where you expect it to be. It's not going to be this immediate thing where something will fall over as soon as a 3rd thing comes out. So again, it gives this different pacing to the game. You're still fighting fires, but you don't have the immediacy.
And so the next difference, what we actually doing in this game, which is the objectives. So it's not all about the same thing. It's not about removing cubes. It has got more variety. The end objective always collecting 5 rings and go to a certain location, but the other 3 could be, there's a variety, like a deck of the objective card that you can use.
Yeah, and the final one, getting 5 rings, going to the same location, that is Pandemic.
Yeah.
Because that is getting 5 cards of the same colour and going to a research station. But here we have spend an action in North Ilithian with this combination of troops present. And so it's completely different. You don't need any cards. Well, okay, you might need some cards to generate those troops, but you don't need to get a bunch of cards in one player's hand to make that happen.
I guess it kind of like perhaps Pandemic Legacy may have a variety of objectives. So maybe this is kind of like a fusion. Who knows? I'm not spoiling any of the Pandemic Legacy.
It does have a little bit of that.
Yeah.
There are many of the, and you may end up with a combination of objectives where you are just getting the 4 different colours into 4 different players' hands, because those objectives are in there. But there's a lot of variability. A lot of them also require 2 characters to be in the same location to resolve them. So that, you've doubled your character count, but you still have to put a fair bit of effort into getting multiple characters in the same place.
So those are the main similarities and differences. Now, before we get to the review, please check out the link to the tutorial of this game by Taryn. So we did a kind of like overview, we call it quick start tutorial, where it is maximum 15 minutes and it will get you to the table very quickly while you can still look at the rulebook for reference. So check out for that. I'll provide the link below once we published it. Now it's a review and we're going to share you a quite a funny story. Not a funny story, I mean, it's very, very niche story if you know how to play the game.
So I will say this game really surprised me as I played it. And it surprised me because it wasn't quite what I expected. I expected, all right, another game in the Pandemic system. It will feel very Pandemic-y. But, and we've kind of alluded to it, it really doesn't feel like playing Pandemic. This has more of a
storyline.
It feels like a story. It's not quite in an Ameritrash way, but in a Nemesis kind of way.
I was going to say Nemesis because Nemesis is one of your top 100 games of all time, spoiler.
Yeah, and I've always said that Nemesis feels like you're using hobby board game mechanisms to live a story in the Alien universe, except it's the what's it called? Where non-copyright Alien universe that feels like it. Anyway.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
This feels like the same thing for Lord of the Rings. The rules that are in here and the extra rules you have to manage, to me, felt like I was going through the tale of Lord of the Rings. I was setting up these huge battles, and sometimes there were giant battles in one location, or sometimes I was just letting one enemy troop march along and just hoping it didn't go badly. And you've got the ring wraiths, they fly around, and it just it feels like you're on that tale. And it really fits with some of these objectives. The destroy the one ring, we spoke about that. Obviously, thematically, that fits the story because you're throwing the ring into Mount Doom. But it's more than just that. This whole mechanism and the Frodo character has everything against it. It's always in the game. Every time Frodo moves or does anything, you have to roll these dice, and these trees are going to cause you to lose hope.
Yeah.
You don't roll all 7 of the dice. You roll dice based on how many enemies are present. And so it makes Frodo this really weak character that all the other characters kind of have to help and have to hide them and keep them away from the ring wraiths.
Which is very thematic as well to the Lord of the Rings.
And then all these cards, or many of these cards on the lower halves when they come up, it's like move more ring wraiths close to Frodo. So all these things are the enemies attacking Frodo while all the other stuff is happening. And it's just, that feels like what the story of Lord of the Rings is.
It's fun and thematic. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Seems like similar with Nemesis, completely different game, but that sort of feeling is very similar. And I agree. It's very fun to play this. The first time I played it, it was at UKGE with Matt Leacock. I mean, he wasn't playing with us. He was probably the Sauron character. He was just like helping us. Didn't give us any tips or give us any tips, but didn't tell us what to do. So we experienced it. And we die ourselves. Like, okay, spoiler, we didn't win. It was just at the last battle, which is always like, I'm not gonna spoil again. But yeah, it's very, very fun. I love the different objectives that you can do. And this is the fun story, right? A real story. One of the games that we play is Boromir Reclaims His Honor. Now, in the movie, I assume that you've watched it. He died, right? Sorry, it's spoiler for some people, maybe.
Yeah. At the end of the first movie.
Thank you. So it's like, I don't know, what's a spoiler? It's like after 10 years, it's no longer a spoiler? I don't know.
This book was released in the 50s.
Oh, that's true. So Boromir passed away at the end of the first movie. So in this one, Boromir needs to do something. He needs to go somewhere and then needs to be in the last battle and then no troops left. And then one other character needs to be in the same locations as Boromir. And that character literally left the board and will be replaced by another character when the next objective is completed.
Yeah, so it's like my recollection of watching the first couple of Lord of the Rings was, oh, Boromir's gone. Hey, who's that Aragorn guy that just turned up? I forget when Aragorn got introduced, but it was just kind of like, yeah, the character is gone and then someone else kind of replaced him, and that's
what
like that objective does.
However, we weren't planning. I mean, the other objective we completed, but the last one. So at the time we complete this objective, the other two objectives are done. So we ended up playing with just 3 characters all up. Well, lucky we won in that game, but It was like, why did we do this? So timing. Just at the first 2 objectives that we completed, the timing was perfect to do it like then and there. So yeah, maybe it was okay.
And so I think what all of that kind of means is if you're a big fan of Pandemic and you've played all the legacies and you really enjoy the challenge of the immediacy of the firefighting, this game may not actually be for you. This game is more go with the flow. There's still that Pandemic puzzle solving in there, but there's a good chance that if you're a really serious Pandemic player, this is going to frustrate you.
Okay, because you can't really kind of like predict or forecast. So, which I actually don't mind this at all. I like both. And I like a bit of unpredictability, and the dice roll is cooperative. So, you know, I'm always like, okay, if I'm rolling the dice, I don't know about that. I always roll bad. But if it's cooperative, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I think it is a very good implementation.
Yeah.
It really achieves what it sets out to do. It achieves something quite different within the Pandemic system, and I think it's a really positive
review.
Positive release.
So do I. So well done, Pandemic. Then again, if you want to see the tutorial by Terrence for up to 15 minutes, check it out. And thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye.